So, this is how to close things.
One, two, three!
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with episode 19 of my Halloween Horror Movie Review Season 3, and this episode is going to be for the third installment in a franchise that I started last year's season on Halloween Horror Movie Review Season 2, and went back to it earlier this season with the second installment, and this film is going to be the third installment of this so-called satanic franchise that I'm still reviewing. It was released in 1983, and that film is going to be 1983's Final Conflict, The Omen 3, or technically it's just called The Final Conflict, but it should be called The Final Conflict, The Omen 3, since it's the third film. But anyway, what's the plot of this film? Well, now coming to his full knowledge and power, the Antichrist in the body of Damian Thorne is about to strike his final blow. The Christ child has been born again on the Angel Isle, Great Britain, which is Scotland, England, and Wales. The plan is simple: kill the Christ child to prevent him from growing up to bring the return of Christ and death of the Antichrist. So yeah. So how was this made? Well, the evening party scene, first off, was filmed in Brocket Hall, just outside London, which was substituted at Damian's residence. Kate, Damian, and Peter walk from Hyde Park in Speaker's Corner. The Moore sequence was shot in Cornwall, including Roch Rock, with added visuals to the lighting. A disposal of the wash sequence was shot around 4:03 a.m. in one night in the North York Moors. The finale was shot at Fountains Abbey in North Yorkshire, and apparently shooting was very cold there and very eerie, according to Graham Baker's commentary on the DVD for this movie. The University of London Observatory in Mill Hill, London, was substituted for the Fenbark Observatory for the second coming sequence, and yeah. But, of course, like many horror franchises around this era, a third installment was greenlit. Yeah, because Omen II was decently successful, they went with a third film, with Damian all grown up. But yeah, after what I just mentioned, the crew did not go back to Subiaco to film the exterior location of the monastery, as it only appears in two scenes in this film. Like, footage from the first one was reused. Stock footage from the Omen was also used when the ambassador who kills himself at the beginning of the film walks to the United States Embassy. The footage of the White House featured in the film was taken from Superman 2, subtracting the visual effects. And Lisa Harrow even said one of the most difficult sequences to shoot for them was pretty much in the film was the death of the first priest in the television studio, because where her character Kate Reynolds interviews Damian, it apparently took over 2 weeks to get right, and it was considered one of the nastiest mainstream movie deaths, involving a priest burning death while trapped in melting plastic shields. And the scene where Barbara saw a vision of her baby burned/dead was shot on Slate 666, and the camera jammed according to director Graham Baker. Stuntman Vic Armstrong performed the backwards 100-foot fall from the bridge in the Guinness World Record 2005. He described it as was the most frightening stunt of his career, and most of the falls were less than several feet. But anyway, yeah, there were some production problems with this film. But anyway, after the movie was completed and finally got through all the struggles, it would go on to be released in theaters on March 20th, 1981. Okay, sorry guys, I screwed up. It's not 1983, it's 1981. Forgive me for reading the years. But anyway, how was the reactions? Well, The first film, like you know, received critical acclaim, and it's one of the best horror films of all time. The second film received a more mixed reaction. The third film received mixed to negative reviews from critics and fans alike. In fact, I recall last year Cody Leach actually gave this movie the "fuck this movie" ranking, and and when I watched that review, I was expecting kind of a skip it or just a week or stream it, but or just a skip it really, but no, apparently got the "fuck this movie" ranking last year, but anyway, the reason I say that because when it comes to my reaction, yeah, this would easily have to be the most boring of the series, but I don't think it was worth that ranking to me. But it was definitely the most boring of the original three, and the worst. This just does not even feel like an Omen film in the slightest. The fact this wraps up the story is just baffling to me. Wow, of all the third installments you just had to pick, this was the one. This is where you had to go out. This is the third movie of the series, and guess what? The style isn't there anymore. There isn't one memorable scene in this movie. The biggest draw is the acting skills of Sam Neill. He shows he has power and the presence to be the Antichrist. Other than him, there isn't anything there. He's very compelling as the evil Damian, but there is a lot of unreasonableness going on here. It seems that the cops would police something is going on. It seems that the priest should be better armed. This one even tries to jazz things up by having Damian all grown up and in charge of a big corporation, looking to waste lots of babies as he's figured out that the second coming is happening in Britain. Add to that the bunch of priests who want to turn Damian to a satanic pincushion. You've got an action-packed spectacular of epic proportions, right? Well, no. Because there's no action in this movie. After a nifty gunshot to the face, the final conflict, just like the film before it, just settles in for a languid trip to the Ho-Humville. Sam Neill, this was his first film, guys, or I think it was his first film, is fine as Damian, but the priest attacks are lame. The subplot around the second coming is barely exciting, and the grand finale is a ruined Abbey has hardly got a pulse, and only the appearance of a 50-foot BG at the end is any good for that finale. Now, I don't think it's one of the worst sequels out there, but it was clear that by this stage, the Omen series, at least, and enthusiasm were growing thin. The Omen had the promise of this evil little child causing Armageddon, and Damian showed us how he cements the wealth and influence to do this. The failure of both Gregory Peck and William Holden to exterminate the little brat was a great build-up to what should have been a violent, memorable, and yet grateful finale. Omen 3, but no, it wasn't. Instead, it just went out with a whimper and a very boring runtime. Omen 3 just largely ignores the events of its predecessor, except for brief glimpses of and references to the Thorn Corporation, Bob Burher, and Damian Uncle. Instead, it attempts to retreat the more successful load of the Omen by placing Damian in Robert Thorne's role as U.S. ambassador in the court of St. James as he climbs the political ladder in an effort to secure the presidency of the United States of America. The film even tries in parts to compete with Damian in providing some pretty gory deaths too, but at a push, the only thing that's really memorable, the only death is the messy suicide of the ambassador preceding Damian, and Don Gordy getting an iron in the face, each of which are instantly forgotten among the tangled plot. Which is a shame, since the death scenes were highlights of the previous installments, and at least they were always memorable in both films. The less sad of the feeble attempts of a group of monks to assassinate Damian Thorne, the better. And the failure would be acceptable if the story were compelling enough. Sam Neill as Damian and Lisa Hurl as his love interest, and BBC journalist Kate Reynolds do try, kind of, to replicate the great romance that was actually quite a convincing part of The Omen. But Damian is, quite frankly, just weird. And I really doubt a woman apparently as intelligent as Kate would want to stick around with him after being butt-raped or ass-raped by him and listening to him practically shouting at her that he is the Antichrist. That should be a sign to get out the door and stop dating this idiot. And even the Satan has called his way off this time. Even though there are literally thousands of them, there's no one to challenge the awesome memory of Billy Whitelaw or even the underused Robert Foxworth and Lance Henriksen of the previous film, for that matter. And in the end, just when you're about to doze off, like, things come to a head, and in one of the limpiest and most predictable endings ever given to a horror film, Damian Thorne is suddenly dead. Even though the printed script stresses that Damian's on the brink of taking command of the world, there's nothing on the screen that translates that mood. As the 1991 sequel shows, they didn't use the daggers of Megiddo properly, and 20th Century Fox, rather than Damian, would return to reap their revenge. Because there was, of course, a fourth film that went straight to TV. And it was worse. It was called Omen IV: The Awakening. It's also going to get a review in this season. But also, well, technically Fox did return to the theaters for their revenge with the 2006 shot-for-shot remake. Even that sucked. 2, and was not needed. Because it was literally just Gus Van Sant's Psycho. But yeah, guys, like, there's a good reason why some people should always say The Omen is one of those horror films that should not have had sequels. Much like with The Exorcist, much like with Jaws, much like with Candyman, much like with, dare I say it, Hellraiser even. Sorry, fans, I haven't seen any of the Hellraiser sequels, but I don't plan to. They were good standalone horror films. And they got ruined by greedy franchise wanters that just wanted to be Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Child's Play, and Halloween. Make so many gazillion sequels and milk the franchise dry. Oh my god. However, I almost forgot to mention some good qualities, because yeah, there are still some good qualities with this film that prevent this from getting a horseshit ranking. Like, for starters, a great performance by Sam Neill, who had, this was his first film, guys, and he's even disowned it. He's even disowned this film, apparently, and pretends and does not like being associated with it. And he gives a pretty good performance too, and he would eventually go on to play in better films like the Jurassic Park franchise as Alan Grant. So this movie did launch his career. The consistently epic score from Jerry Goldsmith, as always. A haunting opening sequence. The very, very occasional, instantly forgettable shock factor about characters we care nothing about. And that one death I mentioned. But, all in all, and I will admit also, while the ending was pathetic, at least they didn't end this franchise with just a sequel setup ending. And ended with some sense of finality and actually killing off the villain. Something I wish a lot of horror franchises try to do. Not do it the stupid way like Freddy's Dead did. Or the stupid way Jason Takes Manhattan tried to do, but thankfully that did not send off the Jason franchise and if that did, I'd be pissed off. Mommy, don't let me drown! But back to this review. Those were the only good qualities I could think of with this movie. This movie was just not that interesting, and this movie was just boring. In the end, Final Conflict is a boring and weak way to end a horror trilogy about the Antichrist that can be strongly avoided at all costs by fans of the first 2 movies. Anyways, that's it for my review of the Final Conflict, and if you're wondering how I'm going to rank the Final Conflict, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you love the first one and slightly enjoy the second one, you're better off not watching this because it is just a waste of 100 minutes you are never going to get back. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank the Final Conflict Omen 3, I'm going to give the Final Conflict Omen 3 a 5 out of 10. There we go. That wraps up my review for Final Conflict Omen 3. So you're probably all wondering, what's going to be the next episode of this season? Well, the next episode is going to be for yet another 3rd installment, and it's for another Satanic Kid franchise that I had started reviewing last year. Also came out in the 70s, was more popular than the first installment of this franchise that I had reviewed the 3rd installment of today. And This one, however, is for an actually good third installment. And it came after a really, really bad second installment that I had reviewed episodes ago. Yes, guys, The Exorcist 3 is going to be next. And until then, guys, that'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and if you like this and want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.